Silver goes crazy, and towards the end of the silver move, people take it to absurd heights. They pile on. I think we're going to have a real move in precious metals, and I suspect that the blow-off top in silver will be one for the record books. Nope. No, human nature is the same. Silver bounces back from oversold bottoms in anticipation of the gold move. The gold move happens. Then the generalist investor comes into the precious metal space. Leadership changes from gold to silver. Silver goes crazy. And towards the end of the silver move, people take it to absurd heights. They pile on. That always happens. I suspect we're going to have a real good precious metals market this cycle. Likely better than the one we had in 2000 to 2010. Likely better than the one that we had in 1989 to 1996. I think we're going to have a real move in precious metals, and I suspect that the blow-off top in silver will be one for the record books. Yeah, I think you have to add in a little arithmetic. When a commodity is priced in the market at a discount to the total cost to produce it, and as a consequence of that, normally viable producers are going out of business. I'm a buyer. Provided that it's a substance like oil or uranium or copper that's needed for the continued material well-being of humans. When the median operating margin in an industry worldwide is at 50%, which is to say, when guys are producing something for $25 a pound and selling it for 50 or 60, I become interested in being a seller. The cure for low prices is always low prices. The cure for high prices is always high prices. I'm almost always early on the buy side, sometimes really ludicrously early. And I'm almost always early on the sell side too. I've learned for my own sanity and frankly for my financial well-being to take a big fat slug out of the middle. I'm happy to quote Bernard Baruch, who said the only guy who always bought at bottom and sold at the top was a liar. It didn't happen. I'm certainly a living example of that. I don't think they're that smart. I've hung out with a lot of those guys for a long time. I kind of was one. Yeah. Although they think they're really smart, although they think they're really masters of the universe, they are much less smart than you think. The truth is that all this time that they allegedly were manipulating the silver market, silver was going down all by itself. The U.S. dollar was very strong in the period 1982 to 2022. And you didn't need to manipulate something that was falling all by itself. I'm not suggesting that there wasn't short-term manipulation in the market. There's short-term manipulations in all markets. Markets as large as the euro-dollar market and the U.S. Treasury market have been proven to be manipulated in the very, very, very short term. Once we began to lose control of the interest rate in 2022, surprise, surprise, the dollar weakened and gold and then silver got stronger. There will come a time when silver will be manipulated up. I remember the 1970s when the overnight raids in the silver market were long raids, not short raids. I remember that very, very, very well. The same players, I would suspect, would build very, very, very large and very long variegated futures positions and then pile into the physical market because the futures positions were leveraged so that the overnight boost in those days in the price of gold and silver would produce outsized gains in the physical market. The same technique that they used in the period 1982 to 2022 on the short side. No difference. The time will come again. Understand that the manipulators take markets in whichever way is the easiest to take it. They're completely agnostic. And when it is easier to manipulate precious metals markets up than down, that's what they'll do. When the natural direction of the markets is down, but the preponderance of punters is on the upside in futures markets, the manipulators happily fill the mooches, in their words. When it's easier to fill the mooches long, that's what they'll do. The shortage of physical silver could be prevented in the future. You may recall 1987, when the silver price shot up as a consequence of Warren Buffett announcing that he owned 20% of the world's above-ground supplies of silver. An interesting thing happened at that point in time. We didn't know how much physical silver was in India, But the price of silver doubled in U.S. dollar terms, and the Indian rupee fell by half, which coincided with either a flood or a drought, I forget which, and the need that the Indian peasantry had to sell their silver, which was up fourfold in their terms, to feed their children. All of a sudden, supply came out of nowhere. The flow of silver, which had been from Dubai to India, reversed, was from India to Dubai. And we had more silver we could shake a stick at, of course. The people who were hurt by that blamed the manipulators, but the manipulators were really the Indian peasantry. Now let's get back to the base question. The silver manipulation works like this. The futures market trades some days 100 times, some days 200 times the amount of physical silver available for good delivery. Almost all of the contracts roll off worthless or are rolled over. Those are the two things that happen. Occasionally, the markets get unbalanced and syndicates of shorts go way, way, way short the silver market, borrow physical silver, which they blow into the market, take a loss on, and cover their shorts as the physical market, the tail wags the future market dog. Remember, too, that when some newsletter writers talk about a short squeeze, that's not the way futures markets work. What happens if there's a real imbalance in futures markets and there's a failure to deliver? We saw this in the tin market 2 years ago. Is the guys who run the exchange, who, by the way, are the dealers and the banks, say, too bad, so sad. We're halting trading. We're going to set a price and we're going to cash settle. That's what happens. If you think that you're going to catch the silver banks way, way, way offside in a market that they control, I got a bridge to sell you. Now, I'm not trying to say that in the event of a silver squeeze, that the long side wouldn't make a lot of money. I shouldn't say this. It is alleged that in my youth, I constructed quite a few short squeezes on the Vancouver Stock Exchange. And it is said that I caused some short syndicates in the equities markets really, truly religious experiences. And I suspect that at some point in time, old habits die hard. When the silver market is stronger than the shorts believe, that they will get trapped. Well, they won't get trapped. They'll get squeezed. And they'll probably lose billions. But the circumstance where they'll be called in for physical metal won't happen. The exchanges will halt the market, and the exchanges will set a clearing price, and it will clear in cash. I guess philosophically, I'm sort of a classical libertarian. I don't mean Libertarian Party libertarian, in that I believe in the non-aggression principle. I don't believe that I have the right to use force or fraud to prevail. I don't believe that other people have the right to use force or fraud on me either. In my declining years, rather than no government, I think I would settle for limited government. I'm tired of hearing myself complain. But the circumstance that we have where the population has become so politicized and believes so much in the fact that their wants or needs are a call on another's means is problematic. And I don't just mean poor people. The idea that Leona Helmsley said, well, taxes are for the little people. This belief that she was entitled to the benefits of society by paying no cost strikes me as elitist. I certainly also am concerned about the disdain that the very wealthy are held in, whether or not you like all of Elon Musk's products, or whether or not you like his serial parenthood or his reported drug use. The fact is that he had to convince people to buy their products. Now, that doesn't mean that he hasn't lobbied, that he hasn't used some, what I would describe as corrupt methodology to extract money from you and I as taxpayers. But the truth is, ultimately, he's had to convince people. The politicians coerce people. And I believe coercion is a bad thing, Dunnigan. I believe in philanthropy, but I believe in philanthropy as a consumer good, not a duty. I engage in various forms of philanthropy, wholesale mentoring, but also direct philanthropy. I don't believe I owe the world anything. I believe that I have, in 60 years of working now, generated substantial value for other people. And the delta between the value that I have created for others, which they have consumed voluntarily, and the utility that other people have produced that I consumed, the delta between those two is called wealth. And I don't think that I have to apologize for my wealth, because I think I generated a whole bunch of surplus utility, which generated that wealth. But philanthropy makes me feel good. There are things that I want to have happen in the world that nobody seems to be willing to start a company to fix, that I feel like I have to do myself. But as I say, I consider it a consumer good as opposed to a duty. I do it for my own purposes, or as von Mises would say, my own volition. Yeah, I'm afraid that the polarization that you're seeing in American politics, by the way, I believe they're both wrong, is a reflection of the fact that people feel entitled to have their belief system win out over other people's belief system. And I don't happen to believe that's true, including my own. The idea that, as an example, there's a bunch of Republicans mobilizing around the, quote, big, beautiful bill, I think is odd. I think it's social fraud. It isn't a bill that cuts spending. It isn't a bill that cuts regulation. It's a transactional bill. And the fact that there are certain groups in society who benefit from that, who think as a consequence of that, that it is good, is problematic. I have a very, very, very good friend, very smart guy, who's a pinko. You know, he doesn't acknowledge that he's a pinko, but he's a pinko, Canadian. And we were talking about some aspects of Canadian tax law that I thought were unfair because they victimized me in particular. Non-resident property taxes, speculator taxes, vacant home taxes, all that racist, xenophobic stuff they did in Vancouver. And I finally got him to admit, he said, Rick, there is a certain level of social services that I think are useful to me in maintaining my lifestyle. And I want you to pay for them. The way the political game works is that people who have organized correctly defend themselves from the system and take advantage of others. And that's what I'm doing to you. But at least he was honest enough, self-honest enough to say, yes, I'm a thief. I would rather spend your dough than mine. And that's a first step. This gentleman is salvageable, clearly.